This is Michael Tucker, and you're watching the new Legends on Deck podcast with host Brian Koss and David Conde.
It's at 57. We got to get him out. 3 pitches. Ain't going to do much, is it? They got 4 hole up, K, and a walk. Let's see if he's ready or needs more. Toro, where we at? Ray.
This is it?
Yes. Change up. Time. All right. That's all she wrote for today. You're at 60, all right? Slider wasn't really sliding like normal, was it?
It was. It was just sloppy. I think honestly, they were just looking at the way, just slop. Everything inside, they got beat off.
All right. We got 4, 5, 6 coming up. We got 1 down. There's 1-1 count on this guy. He's got to shut it down right here.
Slow it down a bit. All right, here we go, Caden. Let's go.
All right. You got a 1-1 count right here, man on, 1 out. Don't try to be too cute. Just blow gas right by these guys. We got to change the momentum around right here, and you could do that for us. All right? All right, get these guys fired up. Do what you do.
Here we go.
You got this? You loose enough?
Yeah, I need to throw a couple here.
Okay, yeah. You get 8 out here, I believe. All right? Got Lopez for Ashford.
Welcome to episode 52 of the Legends on Deck podcast. I'm Brian Koss, along with my co-host, David Conde. And today we are entering the world of travel baseball. Jesse Marlo is a former college baseball player, high school coach, and is the co-founder of Power Baseball and Team Orlando here in the Orlando area. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Brian? Appreciate you guys having me.
You bet, man.
So we're going to get started with one question that we kind of ask all the guests that come on. Just kind of give us a background in baseball. Where did you go up? When did it start? The love of the game start? Where did you start? Did you play? Where did you play at? And then how did it lead you to where you're at right now?
Yeah, I grew up in a little town just south of Kissimmee called Poinciana High School, or Poinciana, which, believe it or not, is still a small town 25 years later, 25, 30 years later. But yeah, I grew up down there, did a lot of my little league, and most of my baseball was done in Kissimmee because we really weren't big enough to have our own league down there. So we were driving 30, 45 minutes pretty much to practices and games. So, my parents put in quite the sacrifice for me to get started. I owe a lot to them. But yeah, I grew up in Poinciana, played a lot of my baseball in Kissimmee. Ended up graduating from Poinciana High School in 1996. I was the second graduating class out of there. Brand new school. It was fun to get that started. Was able to be, a part of building something new. Had a good time there. Kind of, as expected, when you have a new school coming up or a new program, you kind of take your lumps, moving forward. But we had some good players and competitive team. Ended up out of there, actually. Back in that day, there wasn't scouts at all your games. There wasn't Twitter. There wasn't social media. It was pretty hard to find players, unless you went to a really big school that was known for producing players that a lot of these colleges went to. You either had to attend camps, or your high school coach had to be pretty connected. So when I left Poinciana, my route to the next level was going to tryouts. So I went to like Valencia's community college, Santa Fe. I pretty much hit every community college within driving distance from me. and end up getting an offer from Valencia Community College, which does not have a baseball program anymore, and Seminole. Ended up picking Seminole because it was a little bit farther away from home. So was looking a little bit forward to that. So I went over to Seminole and started my career there. Played for Jack Mentelius, who, the field's named after him now. And from Seminole, had a couple good years there, and was lucky enough to be seen and recruited by LSU, and got a chance to play over there for a season, and decided, I think I'd be better off coming back home, get an opportunity to play a little bit more, be on the field more. So I came back home and played for Jay Bergman at UCF. So I had a couple stops along the way, but it's all part of my story, and we got a lot of great experiences and a lot of things that helped me moving forward as a coach, for sure.
So playing at what's the difference between Seminole State and LSU? What was the difference in competition when you went to the different schools?
It was different in every way you could imagine. At Seminole, we didn't really have a locker room. It was kind of like show up and you had like a PE locker room kind of deal that you shared with the basketball players and that kind of stuff. And then you had to walk about a half a mile to get to your field from there. So, you're showing up at like 1 o'clock, walking over to your field. I always laugh because the guy, Dan Canterbury, who recruited me, the day he saw me pitch at Seminole, comes over, he's like, man, I'm over here and I love it because it's so old school. I'm watching you hose yourself down with like a hose, a faucet over by the bullpen. You come over, you eat this little snack. He's like, man, come to LSU, we'll have guys handing you water. we'll have a 4-course meal before the game and all that kind of stuff. And it held true, just from the apparel you get from, you're getting shoes, sneakers, cleats, 3 T-shirts, all that. At Seminole, we had like one T-shirt, 1 pair of shorts, and you threw it on a safety pin, and you threw it to the work study guys that went and washed it for you and came and picked it up the next day. At LSU, you showed up and everything's folded and hung up nicely in your locker room. So it was a big change night and day, as well as it was on the field. Now, don't get me wrong, JUCOs came a long way from 1997 and 98 when I played. There's tons of good players, and a lot of guys get drafted out of it, and it's a lot deeper than it was when I played. When I played, there was guys getting drafted out of there. There's a lot of good players, but, there'd probably be, unless it was a really special team, about 3 to 5 guys in every lineup. And then once you got past that, it was pretty average. If you threw the ball hard enough, you could, get it by a lot of those guys. When you got the Division I, whether it's the SEC or the TAC, which is what it was called when I was at UCF, like, not only are the hitters better, like that 3, 4, 5 hole in JUCO is now also the 8 and 9 hole, at Division I baseball. But for me, the biggest thing was the strike zone changed dramatically. I went from getting 2 balls off in JUCO level, because you've got, the same guys that are going to coach the high school down the road the next day, compared to, basically professional umpires in the SEC, where the strike zone is the size of a Pringles can sometimes. So that makes a huge difference. And that's where, that's when sometimes people understand, man, this kid is like the greatest high school pitcher. He gets everybody out, but and then somebody says his stuff just isn't good enough. He might be great in high school, but he only throws 82, 84. That's when that stuff comes into play. When you got to put that ball, in this little area, you got to have really good stuff to get it by people when you're shrinking down that strike zone a lot. So, that for me, that was the biggest eye opener, was, the change of the strike zone. And, the talent level was expected going into it, but that was a big surprise for me. And I think it affected my level of play, because I was a guy that lived off the fastball and didn't have a lot of nasty off-speed stuff. So, like I said, that's why the guys with the nasty stuff are the ones you see on TV. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer for those guys to harness it in, but ultimately that's what these guys in the pros are looking for.
Well, not to mention, you go to school like LSU and you're playing in front of 10,000 people, versus, Seminole State, you're just probably like playing a high school game, right? So if that, well, not necessarily, because some of the high schools will pack them out even more. but that's a big trend. That's more than playing LSU baseball is more than you're going to play if you're playing up to probably AA, AAA minor league baseball, in terms of atmosphere for the game.
Yeah, absolutely. We used to have a lot of guys like Chad OJ and a few other big leaguers come back, and they'd talk to us, and they'd be like, "Guys, this is basically the same as playing AA it's AA baseball and up. This is kind of the talent you're going to be seeing. So you're in a great spot to prepare for that." But that's the same thing they were telling us. But as you said, even then, like, you're not getting those crowds like LSU got in even AA or AAA. Like, you're not seeing that again until you're in the big leagues or you make the playoffs in AAA or AA.
Yeah.
So it was pretty special and pretty fun, and it's something you got to get used to, like you said.
No doubt. So let me ask you a question. How do you said the JUCO scene has changed a lot in the last 20 years for sure. And I know that there's a number of junior colleges here in Florida that produce a lot of draft picks. What's the niche there? Like, what do you advise a player? And I'm sure it's got to be different for everybody, but a player that's looking to play that's a good ball player that wants to get drafted at some point, right? So do they go to the D1 route, play in a big school? Do they go to where's that player, that certain player fit in, or what kind of player fits at which level?
I mean, honestly, it's a hard question to answer over a broad scale or a generalization. That's the thing about baseball in this business is, like, everybody's situation is different, and that's kind of one of the things that we really try to get off at Power Baseball and get across is just like, hey, everybody's situation is different. Like, even if you're a Division I player and your neighbor was a Division I player 3 years ago, like, your process still could and most likely will be totally different than this one's, and it all varies, like financial situations, grades, player makeup, home life, draft status, projectability. Like, there's tons of things where he's at in his development of his career. Like, there's tons of different things, and a lot of it, honestly, nowadays with these players, it's coming down to relationships they're building with these coaches before they get there, and doing their research on these coaches and kind of seeing the work that they've done before them, and they're wanting to go to because it's just like anything else in this world. Like, there's going to be programs that are going to be really, really big on pitching development, and there's going to be some that are going to be really big on hitting, and some that are going to be really big on both, and some of them that don't really care about either. It's just, we're going to find the best players and go out there and compete. So, like, depending on who you are, where you're at, what extra help you have outside, and those types of things, it all kind of comes into play, making those decisions for the players.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's individual. It's different for everybody. Baseball's so different in that way, I think, versus other sports, especially like your bigger sports like football or basketball, where it's pretty much a singular path from high school to college. But baseball's unique in that way.
Well, for me, the most unique thing about it too is I feel it's kind of that one sport where I always say the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Like, me and you could be watching the same player, and I could be like, that kid's awful, and you could be like, I love that kid. And trust me, this happens all the time. Like, there'll be a coach, I don't like anything about him. The coach next to him, they're not saying this to each other, but I'll hear it. This guy's, I love this kid, I want him. And it's just like, everybody sees things differently. Everybody thinks they could help somebody a different way, or they don't think. Some people think they could fix people. Some people think they can't. Some people are looking more on the player makeup than the physical makeup. It's kind of, everything's different. And as you know, like, especially in the recruiting world, stats don't matter at all. So it's like in football, if you have the most tackles on the team, you're probably going to go play at a good big school, where in baseball, you could hit 500 in high school, but doesn't necessarily mean you're even going to play college baseball at all, because the level of competition changes, depending on where you went to high school and all. There's just too many variables and factors. And like I said, like, a lot of it until you're actually in the big leagues is all based on projectability. Unfortunately, you see how these guys get paid,
Yeah.
in the big leagues, it's all about projectability rather than, what you've done in the past and what your history's been.
So you touched a little bit on the coaching style in that world. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit. What led you in that direction to coach? You spent 13 years at West Orange High School, Winter Garden. So kind of share with us a little bit about that experience and what made you really want to get into coaching.
So originally, when I got out of college, baseball's kind of been my life, forever. It's kind of the only thing that drives me, the only thing that I've ever kind of wanted to do. So when I got done playing it was kind of a no-brainer. All right, this is what I need to continue doing. Luckily, one of the guys I played with named Chris Youngberg at UCF ended up getting a head coaching job at Colonial High School. So I ended up going with him and coaching 3 years at Colonial High School before getting a head job at West Orange. When I got into it, my original reason was, as I told you my story at Poinciana High School, how it was kind of go around, do your own thing, drive to these tryouts and hope you make it. Like, I didn't really want kids to have to go through that as well. I wanted to kind of be that bridge for these kids and be the connected person to where, I could go around and help guys and call colleges and say, this kid can play over here, this kid over here, you need to go see him, and that types of thing. And that was the original thing that drove me. And then as I got into it, I started, having more desires and ambitions to move up the chain, possibly coach college baseball, possibly could be a major league scout and stuff. And, as I continued to do this, I just felt like this was more the right spot for me for multiple reasons. I take my hats off to those college coaches and then pro scouts, the amount of time that those guys put into what they do. And, especially in the college world up until about the last year or two, like those guys were eating ramen noodles for a long, long time before, they were able to support their families and stuff. So it was definitely a tough road. Thankfully, it's starting to get easier with a lot of the rule changes the NCAA is making and stuff. But, I said, this is what I want to do. I'm having a great time helping kids. I'm building lifelong relationships with these guys. I still have, talked to kids that I coached at Colonial High School in 2002, which, they still hit me up on Facebook and those types of things. And I'll see them sometimes when we're out to eat, and it's awesome. That's what it's all about, building relationships, building them lifelong memories. And, I feel like this is the place that I could reach the most people and do it. That's kind of one of the reasons I got out of coaching at West Orange High School is as Power Baseball grew and as Team Orlando started to grow, and it was only in its infant stages then, I had to kind of pick and choose where I was going to put my time. And as much as I loved coaching high school baseball, I looked at it and I was like, all right, with high school baseball, ultimately all I could really help is about 35 to 40 kids that are like on my roster. Now, I could do more for those kids probably than I can for a lot of the kids I work with now, just for the simple fact that I saw them 5 days a week for a whole school year, and I could kind of dictate what they were doing day in and day out and really develop that player. But ultimately, like I said, my goal was to help as many kids as possible. And, with Power Baseball, we have over 200 kids on our rosters. Team Orlando, we have over 100. So now I'm able to help, ultimately 300 kids and families rather than the 35, 40 I was able to take care of over there at West Orange High School. So that's kind of, what got me into it, what drives me, and what motivates me to continue to do this.
I do have one follow-up question to that. I coach 13 and 15U kids. I've been coaching. I like the younger kids. You can kind of mold them, talk to them, work with them and kind of see where they're going to go. But my question to you as a coach is, let's say you have your style. Let's say you have two kids, coming to you. They both have different swings. They have different approaches to the plate. Do you feel like you need to change them? Let me add to that question. They're both hitting the ball very well, okay? Do you feel that there's a change that needs to be happening with them, or do you embrace what they have and kind of work with that?
I'm the kind of guy, if it works, don't fix what's not broke. Everybody does things differently. No, I honestly, I'm against like having like a cookie cutter mold, a cookie cutter approach, a cookie cutter swing, load, and those types of things. Everybody's got to kind of be their own person. Everybody's going to have a different type of swing. If you're 6'2", maybe you're going to lift the ball a little bit more, and it's okay to do that and try to drive balls in the gap. Whereas if you're a 5'5" guy that's left-handed and can really run, and all you're doing is hitting pop-ups to the center fielder or the left fielder and not driving them back at all, it's not doing anything for anybody. So that guy, we might talk about being a little bit more flatter swing, a little bit more ground ball, backside approach. But if they're getting the results, I mean, I leave them alone because, as you know, in this sport, one of the biggest things is confidence, and you can turn on the TV right now, watch a major league game. Like, there's a lot of guys that don't have picture perfect swings. There's guys that you could even say have ugly swings, but they have really good hand-eye coordination and they have unbelievable timing, and ultimately at the end of the day, for me, it's all about pitch recognition and timing. All the other stuff, it's going to vary from person to person, but those are kind of the two absolute musts for sure.
Well, I'm glad you said that. Sometimes when you have your son on the team or you coach different kids, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, this guy has more success, or they've won more games, and the program's much more successful. But you said the nail on the head. You can't take one cookie cutter approach and expect every kid to be successful in that box. Every kid's going to come across in a different way. They're going to, like you said, if they're popping the ball up and not driving the ball, okay, maybe it's timing, maybe it's the balance, maybe they're just not approaching the bat the right way. So I'm glad you said what you said, because I say it all the time. I'm like, every kid, I take every kid, I look at them differently. I don't coach travel ball. I don't have a problem with travel. My kid played a little bit in the summer, but I just saw that it was like, you can't take a kid and just say, I want everyone to bat the same way. I want everyone to swing the same way. It's just, I don't think it's possible. If you look at Major League game, not one guy swings the same way like the other. One guy, if you step and go, I've seen that. I've seen guys wait and step at the same time. And you're right. The confidence level of a kid, when you tell them that, hey, you hit the ball great, everything's doing great, but no, I'm gonna do it. You're gonna do it my way because you're gonna hit it even harder my way. I mean, but I'm glad you said that, because it was kind of like, I'm trying to teach these kids the same thing. Like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, okay, well, now I'm going to share this video when it's over, and I'm going to say something.
There you go.
Another guy played college baseball, and he's saying the same thing.
So let's get into like a little bit of the history there. So you're coaching at West Orange, and you guys start power baseball simultaneously, right? This happens while you're coaching at West Orange.
Mm-hmm.
And then you grow, you start growing that program, and then you make that jump full time into onto the power side and onto the Team Orlando side. So how'd the idea come together? How did that develop? Give us a little history lesson on the power program.
Well, so me, Eric Lassiter, and Brian Demsey are the three owners of Power Baseball. And there's another travel ball organization in this town that's on the other side of town named the Orlando Scorpions that all three of us used to work for. Probably since I was with them from about 2007, and then Demsey and Lassiter are a little younger than me, so they came in a little bit later. But pretty much as soon as they got into the coaching world and out of playing baseball themselves, they started coaching as well. We all did that. We had a great time, won a lot of championships with those guys, won Trade Anywhere. Matt Gerber was awesome, who ran the program at the time. And, just one of those things, their business grew. They ended up partnering with somebody else. Personalities didn't match. I just had my own kid and myself. Life was getting crazy. So I kind of stepped back. I said, you know what, I'm going to spend more time at home. I'm going to get away with this. So originally I never left that travel ball scene to start my own thing. I was kind of leaving it to kind of push it away and almost go a different direction, focus more on the high school ball and just being home and things like that. And I was actually going to just go straight into the youth with Team Orlando, which is what I did originally, because there was really no youth programs. It was just kind of like dad teams, one-off teams. They had one big organization, in Windermere called the Wolverines, who does not exist anymore. But that was really it. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do, the youth stuff. And I kind of wanted to do something a little bit more on my own rather than just be a coach, with the Scorpions and the travel ball stuff. So left and did that. Couple months later, Lassiter, Brian Demsey, and at the time, Tony Mielek, who's the head coach at Bishop Moore, he was original founder of Power Baseball also. Those guys called me up and they're just like, hey man, this and this is going on. We know you left. What do you think about us trying to do this together and doing our own thing? And it was like at the time, Coach Lassiter was at Apopka. I was at West Orange and Mielek was at Bishop Moore, which he still is. We were one of the biggest programs in the country. We had like the second biggest high school in the whole country. We were ranked top 25 by USA Baseball. And we had a lot of really good things going on there. Coach Lassiter was building Apopka. He had a lot of really good things going on there. Tons of players coming out of that school. Bishop Moore has always been a great school since it's been around. And then we just had a couple other guys, like Brian Demsey. He used to run like the uncommitted program for the Scorpions. And he also was very big in doing lessons. So he had a lot of connections. So we said, hey man, like, I got this school, you got this school, you got this school. We know all these kids from guys we coach. Like, let's see if we could do this. So we all just literally got on our phones and called every kid we knew that we thought would play baseball for us and started making rosters. And we were able to have a team at each age group the first year we started. I think we ended up having like over 60 players for our first season, no tryout or anything, and just end up having teams. From there, we did that in the fall, and then from there we just kind of started building on, started doing tryouts, and it just started growing. But originally when this thing started, like our bread and butter, which is still a really, really big thing for us, but when we originally started, it was what we now call our uncommitted program, which a lot of these bigger programs out there, all the glory is the kids that commit to Florida State, Vanderbilt, Miami. Well, in the reality of it, most of those guys, they're going to commit to those schools no matter who they're playing for. They don't even have to play travel ball sometimes. They're going to find those guys. It's the guys that need to go play at Wofford, at North Florida, at Jacksonville, at, Presbyterian, and all these schools that nobody's walking around school wearing their sweatshirts and their T-shirts, but they're amazing schools, great places to get education. Tons of people still get drafted out of there and play in the big leagues. But they just need help getting there. You need the connections. You need somebody to call those schools and say, hey, I got this kid down here in Florida. I know you're 5 states away, but this kid, he wants to go to a Christian school. He's got amazing grades. His parents got a little money where they can afford to pay a tuition of $40,000 to go there. And those types of things. So that's really how we built it up. And we ended up having like probably 30 commits in the first season we did this, and people started noticing. And as I said, we just continued to grow. And now we're at a point where we're having a one weekend tryout, and we have, 280 to 330 kids there over the last 2 or 3 seasons. So it's really been special to see where it's got. But, we've had a lot of support along the way, and I've got some really great partners that do this with me that, do an amazing job. And this is kind of always on the forefront of their mind and helping these players get to where they want to be.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, actually, because I didn't grow up in Orlando. I'm originally from Michigan, so is it that the backstory of the organizations? I wasn't sure of. I know the Scorpions and I know Power, but I didn't know how that kind of West Side component came in with Power, and it's natural. We got listeners from all over, so David's down in the southwest part of the state, but. Yeah, I mean, we're like, I'm on the west side of Orlando. I'm Winter Garden area. And, so it powers like, the name. And then you've got, east side too. There's so much baseball here in Orlando. There's plenty of opportunity to get in on it, right?
Yeah, for sure. And ultimately, that's kind of was our thinking is like, man, if we could just get the best players in Orlando alone, like we're going to be competitive.
Right.
And that's kind of what our focus still is to this day. Like, let's control our backyard and these kids that are here. There's no reason to let them go, And,
I mean, looking
going
at
off topic,
right.
Going off topic, I think UCF's going to start doing the same thing. At least that's what Wallace says. He's like, I'm not letting these kids get out of Orlando. And I've always said, if UCF could just keep these kids in Orlando where they're at, man, they're going to be a top 25 program year in and year out.
No, that's a great point. Actually, that's a very smart maneuver on his part because, yeah, you don't have many. I look at your rosters, and we'll get in a little bit. We'll talk about your 17U team, but you look at your rosters. I mean, these are all the top high schools in the area. You don't have to go too far to find premier, statewide competitive high school programs. So it works out in that way because it's such a baseball rich area.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is your role on the teams? Are you the pitching coordinator? Do you train the pitchers? Do you kind of just run your own team? Like, what is your one of your roles, your main roles?
So I got a couple different roles. For Team Orlando, I'm basically kind of the admin, and I oversee the player development of the program. And then I also do run my own team. Actually, I'm running 2 teams now, but ultimately my team and my role is always coaching the 14U team. So I'm kind of getting them top 14U guys right before they go into the high school level. And I coach those guys in games, but when we're practicing, I'll usually coach the whole 14U age group and, try to be involved with those guys as much as possible and just get them all the information and kind of give them that crash course over them 2 seasons to get them where they need to be going into power baseball, going into high school. And like I tell the guys that play for me, I'm like, guys, my goal is not for you to just make a high school team. I want you guys to be in consideration of being on the varsity team as a freshman, and that's kind of how we go to work in practices, and that's our goal there. But for Team Orlando, it's player development. It's overseeing the whole organization and doing a lot of the admin back end stuff. For power baseball, it's also the player development. And then I coach the top team, which is always going to be your 17U, your juniors that are going to be seniors. I've usually always had that group because from my history and my past and everything, I've always kind of been on the top team. I've always been coaching these players that have had the agents, have had to have a lot of conversations with pro scouts and those types of guys. And that's where we're at in our organization now. Those are the type of players that are on our top team. So, I usually take that level since I already have familiarity with those guys. Those guys already know me. They've got my phone number. It's just makes that streamline a lot easier. So I'm kind of that connection between the player and the scout. Not that Demsey and Lassiter don't do any of that, but the majority of that stuff's going to kind of run through me. If these guys need advisors or agents or those types of things, I kind of help facilitate those things for them as well. As far as the actual training, I do training at Turn2, which is a facility, and everything's kind of a separate business. This isn't all like lumped into one thing. Like Brian Demsey owns Turn2, and we kind of run everything out of there. And then Team Orlando is its own separate thing, and then Power is its own separate thing. So we do all the training runs through Turn2. Brian Demsey is the hitting coordinator, and I do all the pitching stuff. So I'm a pitching guy. Demsey handles the hitting. Coach Lassiter also is a pitching guy himself, but he's a high school coach now, so he's kind of a jack of all trades still.
Yeah. So we've had a number of pitchers and current pitchers, former pitchers on the show, and they kind of give it their philosophy on the position, how unique it is, and the different styles that you want to train the youngsters to have, and the arm angles. So kind of give us, what's your philosophy on pitching? Do you break them down from bottom to top? Do you look at arm angles? Like what is it that help? What do you do to help the kids to get to where they need to be?
For me, the first thing I'm going to look at when somebody comes in is I'm always looking at their feet and their lower half. The biggest thing to pitching and throwing hard is one, having balance, and one, kind of creating that energy from the ground up. Most guys that come in and most guys that pitch, even the ones that are better, they usually are out of sequence, meaning they're working from the top down. So we try to focus a lot when guys come in, just kind of being able to create that ground force from the ground and working it up and having that proper sequence from going from like the foot to the thigh to the hip to the chest to the torso to the arm, and that, you know, releasing it out to the hand. And then just kind of syncing it up and speeding it up and trying to get it to translate onto the mound. But once again, everybody's different. You know, one thing I don't try to do, just like the swing, is you definitely don't want to have cookie cutter arm actions. Everybody's going to be a little bit different. You try to stay with whatever is natural as possible, you know, because that's going to be the easiest. If you're kind of looking at it and, you know, you're a coach, you said you coach 13 to 15-year-olds, you've seen it. Kids that just have like some funky arm actions. Like it's like it doesn't move in a circle, right? So when you get those kind of situations, you do got to start messing with it. But believe it or not, like 9 out of 10 times you could almost fix the arm action by fixing what's going on in that lower half. You know, sometimes they're just like spinning off too early. They're, you know, you got to stay stacked up. That's my biggest thing. It's getting in a stacked position, staying in a stacked position, trying to keep that back leg, you know, is horizontal with your horizontal with the ground as possible. You know, once that thing goes down into the plate and starts collapsing on you, you're going to start losing that power. So we spend a lot of time with our guys just trying to get in that stacked position. And I really try to relate it to hitting a lot. So when I get kids that can hit, it makes it a little bit easier. And I'm always like, all right, get ready to hit. All right, show me your load. And every time they load, they kind of like tilt their hips back a little bit. They get some power in their hips. Now I'm like, all right, go ahead and get in your pitching, get in a balance position. I want you to like go from balance to your throw. And they just kind of like fall like a tree, or like I said, their front leg like turns in and rotates towards the thing. And I'm like, all right, so at what point did you ever get power? You know, and a lot of these kids never really ever think about like getting loaded or getting power. So, you know, to go along with that, sometimes it's a mindset. Sometimes they're doing everything right, and you just got to be like, all right, buddy, you've grown up worrying about mechanics, worrying about throwing strikes. That's all awesome, and it's perfectly right. Now you need to do all this with a little bit of intent. Now you need to throw strikes with the intent to throw it by somebody. And you could do different things like that, throw weighted balls, do run and guns, do turn and burns. A lot of the things you probably see on social media where guys are screaming and yelling with their shirts off and going crazy and things like that. So, you know, that's another thing. Like some people use that as a cookie cutter. Get in here and take your shirt off and get hyped up and run and throw it 100 miles an hour. Like, have I seen it work for guys firsthand? Absolutely. Does it work? Absolutely. But is it for everybody? No, I don't think so. You know, throwing the weighted balls. Does it work? Are there big leaguers that do it? Is Driveline making millions of dollars off it? It must be working. Yeah, it works for some people, but I don't think it's something that is good for everybody, you know? So just kind of goes back to what we talked about hitting, you know, you got to look at everybody differently, especially in this sport. Everybody's a different individual. I mean, even guys nowadays in the weightlifting world will tell you the same thing. Not everybody should do a back-loaded squat. Some guys need to do front-loaded squats, and they look at the anatomy of their hips and how they can get into a squat position and stuff. And for all these years, everybody's been forcing back-loaded squats, and it's hurt kids because they physically can't get into these positions because of their hip structure, you know? And that's kind of part of the pitching and hitting also. And as you move to college and you go to the pros and they have all these machines and all these cameras and all this stuff, they have these force plates now where it can tell you how much pressure you're pushing into the ground when you're swinging or when you're pitching. And it's mind blowing. If I could tell you all the things that they have out there, it's like a science movie or something. But those are the things that these advanced people are doing, is like looking at the person's anatomy and saying, okay, this movement's going to work a lot better for you than the one you're currently doing, you know? And we dive into that over there at Turn2. We have a biomechanics guy named Barrett Stover who runs RSP, and he'll do evaluations with guys, and we communicate from hitting aspect and pitching aspect. And Barrett will be like, all right, he can't internally rotate his hip this way, or he's very good at externally rotation, and different types of things. And it kind of just helps you build that player and get him where he needs to be when you kind of have all these people networking together.
No, you made a great point. I think most kids nowadays think that they just whip their arm as hard as they can and the ball's gonna go fast. And I think my oldest son used to wonder like, Dad, why can't I throw hard? So I had him work out with Luis Ramirez. He's a assistant pitching coach now with the major league team with the Twins. They're always local, so always kind of around the area and stuff. So he worked with him and he says, hey, I'm gonna work with his bottom half. I think I need to work. So he did that. And he worked from the bottom up. And I can say in like three months' time, my son was throwing harder than he ever threw in his life. And he didn't end up playing baseball. Brian knows the story. He quit baseball and started doing wrestling in high school. But the change that I saw, and I started to believe in that. And I saw it. And I'm not a pitching guy, but I try to tell the kids, hey, let's work with the bottom. Oh no, coach, I'm gonna throw 100 miles an hour. I'm gonna whip my arm. Like, that's not how it does. So I always try to get them with a pitching guy, but when I seen it firsthand, when he started working with his bottom legs and strengthening his legs and getting the push off and the power, man, then that arm angle, I mean, that ball was flying out of his hand. I'm like, wow, like I started to believe in that. Like, wow, this is awesome. I all these years I just want to throw as hard as you can. I didn't know. I'm not a pitching guy. I'm an outfielder, so I like the outfield. The other guys I try to work with them. But no, that's good. A good way to approach it. It shows me that your approach to baseball, you're a very intelligent guy. You know exactly how to break down the kids, how to work with the kids, how not to just look at every kid the same way. I'm in Southwest Florida, so I can't tell you what teams do that, but it's good to know that there's programs out there that truly believe in developing the kids where they're at, and then giving them the strength to the work with their weaknesses and enhance their strength. And I think that's what I try to do, is to work with their weaknesses and just enhance their strength. And then the arm angles, man, let me tell you, I've seen kids go from here, boom, and there's nothing you can do, nothing you tell them is going to change. I just be like, okay, if that's how you want to throw it, it's nothing I can do. I mean,
you're playing first base.
You're going to end up hitting somebody every time you throw it this way and just let it go. But
that's funny. No, that's great. So I wanted to address, so you're kind of big news coming off this summer for you guys, right? So the 17U Marucci team captured the national championship in Atlanta over end of July, I believe it was. And that you got going into the fall season ranked #1 in the country, which is obviously a huge accomplishment for the program. It's this first time that you guys have got that ranking. And then, so tell us a little bit about that team, the players on the team. I mean, you go on your website. You guys have a great website, by the way. It's very transparent, which I like, because you got all your grads listed, their commitments listed, the teams. I mean, it's all like, you can learn a lot about your program just from visiting. But just tell us about that team and what you guys have been able to put together. I know you're the head coach of that team as well. So what can you share about this team?
Yeah, no, first off, like, that tournament, it was amazing. An amazing week of baseball, amazing run. Those guys, for those people that aren't in the travel ball world at the high school age yet, I know them 5-game, them 3-day Sundays to win the youth tournaments and 14U, that stuff's a grind. Imagine doing that over about 6 days. We had to win 11 games over 6 days, and it was 5 games in the final 2. At the end of July in Atlanta, hot Atlanta. So yeah, it's a mental and physical grind for sure. We got in the championship game, and it's pretty cool to see. Like, it truly was like blood, sweat, and tears. Like, the guys are like falling out on the field, like cramping up left and right, like just giving it all they have. Like, the other teams coming out there, and you could tell they're out of pitching, so they're bringing in the shortstop, who's probably pretty good for his high school, and he's already played 3 games in that day, and he's throwing a pitch and he's shaking his arm. Or they bring in the next guy and he's throwing a pitch and he's stretching his leg the next time. We're bringing in a guy that's thrown, twice already in the past 3 days. So It's really fun to watch, as a coach from the dugout. I can only imagine it watching it from the stands as a fan or a parent. But just the team is just a super special team. It's a team that, they don't come around very often. And you hear coaches say this. I'm sure you guys doing this on this podcast have heard it once or twice, for sure. Just like, man, this is a special team. They don't come around very often. They were basically, a lot of these guys were considered like the better players when they were 13 and 14. And somehow we were able to get all these guys together with power baseball when they were freshmen, So we always kind of say, like, you guys were built to win. You guys, this team was built to win because they had everything. Like they had everybody on the team, when they were sophomores, we're all throwing the ball 86 plus, half of them were throwing 90, half of them were committed as sophomores and stuff, So like I said, it was just a special group, not only talent wise, but makeup wise. Like, the families were awesome. And we pretty much had the same group that we had since they were freshmen. We'd drop one here, pick up one here and there. But for the most part, man, like, if we had a team of 20, team of 18 or so starting day one of freshmen, I would imagine at this point, there's probably 12 to 14 of the original members. So pretty good amount over, a 4-year span, 8 seasons. It doesn't happen at any level of baseball, really. So it was really fun and special to keep those guys together for that long period of time. And, this tournament that we just won, which is considered the biggest tournament to win in travel baseball, they ended up being in the Final Four and losing as freshmen. Last year, they made it to the championship game. They were actually winning the game going into the last inning and ran out of pitching, had to bring in some guys that never pressed, and we ended up walking some guys that ended up losing in the bottom of the 7th. So, like, we were kind of like the favorites going into this thing, which makes it easier to win it at the end. Of course, I got to take over the team from Coach Lassiter after he's had them since they were freshmen. So I'm like, great, man. All the pressure's on me. It can only go downhill from here. Final Four and runner up the final year. But all right, let's roll. So, going into the season, the kids played great from day one. Another big tournament PG offers is it's called the Elite Championship Series in Hoover. We ended up losing that in the championship. They made it to the championship game in that. And then, as you said earlier, we won the championship. So Final Four to runner up to this year, when the most pressure that you could possibly have on you, they still got it done was super, super special. But like I said, just an amazing group of kids, amazing group of parents. It's not all the time. I wish I could say that when you get these super, super talented kids that are going to all these big schools and they're going to get less money, that they're always a joy to be around. But reality is they're not. But with this group, they were, man. Like, you had kids fighting who was going to carry the balls to the truck. Where a lot of times you get these teams and you got to say it 20 times and you walk out and the ball bag's still sitting there. But this team was amazing, and they really. One thing I always try to get across to my teams early in the season, like, the best teams that I ever had, and to be a championship team, you got to want it for the guy sitting next to you as much as you want it for yourself, and I could really say that this team showed that, I'm talking after the first batter, like, guy might see 3 pitches, Maddox McDougal, see 3 pitches, maybe pops out or whatever, comes off the field, and he's running to the on-deck circle to tell the next batter, like, hey, his ball's got a little bit of sink on it, and I saw a nasty slider. So, like, he might only told him information, but it was like they're constantly, like, giving that information, constantly giving that feedback, constantly trying to help these guys, like, get that so their friends could be just as successful as they are, because they knew that's what it was going to take to be the best team there was. They get on second base. I'm telling you, they had the signs within 2 pitches. Hey, we're doing this for signs. Oh, they got us. All right, 2 minutes later, we got them again. Just locked in 24/7. And honestly, man, they've been like that since they were freshmen. Like, I didn't have the luxury of coaching these guys the whole time. I just got them this season, and I was able to kind of spectate from afar. And, as they're a freshman, same thing, going up, telling what's going on, trying to steal signs, trying to see how many times the pitcher's looking at first base. Just really, really advanced things that you don't see, especially in the travel ball world. So it'll be a team that we'll remember and we'll talk about for a long, long time, I'm sure, sitting around the facility at Power.
Well, it's funny. David, you look at the team roster, and we've had Lassiter on the show, and we've had Sedone on the show. So I think there's 3 guys from Windermere, 3 guys from Haggerty on that roster. So you're obviously feeding in some real high quality high school programs. So they have great coaches of the other, and then there are other seasons as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Real quick, what are the expectations going into the fall? And so this team is graduating this year. They're seniors this year.
Yeah, they've got one event. There's one big event that takes place down in Jupiter. It's the fall WWBA. We won the national championship. This is considered the world championship.
Okay.
The difference is the one that we won in the summertime. It's anybody can get in it. There was I think 300 or 420 teams I think were in Atlanta.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's nuts. That's what makes it special to win that thing, And then this other one, it's only 90 teams, but you have to be invited to it, and it's only the best of the best teams. So this is kind of considered I always tell people it's kind of like the NFL Combine for baseball. It's where all the scouts are at. There's golf carts everywhere. Cardinals will have all 30 of their scouts there. The Indians will have all their cross checkers and scouting directors as well as their area scouts, and it's just that final time to see those guys before the high school season, because as they can't go see every player play games in high school, so they kind of try to figure that out in the fall. And say, all right, I really like this kid. We need to make sure our scouting director gets down to Windermere to go, that kind of thing. So that's what we're rolling into. It's so things are a little bit weird in the fall, and they're continuing to progress this way as players continue to get more advisors, as money continues to get bigger for these players and those types of things. But less and less kids are starting or continuing to play this final season of the fall, and I get it. We just had a couple players that went to the Perfect Game All-American Showcase, which was out in Phoenix. Yeah. Then they went to the USA Baseball, try to make that, which is a week long in Cary in North Carolina. They went to some other showcase, and they haven't stopped, honestly, since we had in July. So I can only, imagine what they're going through. So especially the pitchers, man, they've thrown a lot of pitches, so sometimes it's best for them to just take it off and save their bullets for the high school season and just roll from there. So fortunately for us, we've got most of our guys back. We're missing probably one or two or three key pieces, but we'll get through it, and it's always fun to bring up class. We were the runners up in this event, I believe it was 2 years ago, and probably 60% of our team were underclass. So, we have no problem showing up in that thing with, our starting pitcher being a junior, our starting shortstop being a junior, because if they're out there, they're good enough to be out there. We got plenty of kids that are committed to schools that are juniors, and even a few sophomores before the recruiting rules change. Have a competitive team out there, but ultimately, we don't. I said how I told that team, hey, this team was built to win. Really don't per se try to build teams to win, and hey, we're shooting to win this tournament, and we want to have all these trophies. Because at the end of the day, another month from now, nobody's going to remember who that won the biggest tournament in travel baseball, who won it, because most people don't remember who won it last year, So
right.
We try to, like we said earlier, we're trying to develop players, develop young men to be successful in the real world if they don't make it in baseball or after baseball. and then get these kids on to college. You know, winning is a byproduct product of all that. You do things the right way, you take care of all that other stuff, you're going to end up winning baseball games. And that's kind of the way we've gone about it, and it's worked out well for us. At least we feel like it's been working.
Well, we're looking forward to hearing about another national or world championship victory here in another month or so. So we'll check back in with you then, and hopefully we'll be able to report on that.
I tell you what, man, if they could pull it off and win that one, they will have won every big event that Pete offers. So that'd really be the cherry on the top right there.
That's great. That's great.
Well, thank you. We got a lot of information today. I mean, our listeners have, our followers have. You have, like I said before, you have your program has been successful. Obviously with the championship, but I think you're doing a lot more for the kids than they realize it. You know, you're giving them the tools that they need. And if just a portion of those kids take it to the next level, I mean, you're a success. But I think, like you said, you have hundreds of kids that have come through your program. And I believe now George Jr. or George Cousins, little George, is going to be in your program. So he's a good one. So just make sure you try to steer him to being a Mets fan. He'll be so much better. I think.
You're a Mets fan? See, I didn't even get to that part I had a little note where you were going to ask me about what developed my love. Man, one thing that developed my love for sure for the game was the '86 Mets.
There you go.
My dad was a huge Mets fan. I mean, I'm talking back in the days where you had the arrow antenna with the snowy TV, and my dad's turning a little more to the left, and we're trying to pick WORR up from New York with the metal antenna, man, and we're watching it through the snow. Oh man, '86 Mets, that was my team, man. '85 to '87, moving forward, I fell in love with it. My parents used to take me to all the spring training games and go see those guys. So love Darryl Strawberry and Dwight Gooden and Lenny Dykstra and Mookie Wilson. I wanted to name my first kid Mookie. My wife wasn't having it though. Go figure.
So, quick question: How old were you in '86?
Oh well, I was born in '78, so okay. I'm not very good at math. So what was I?
You were 8. Yeah, 8. Yeah, I was 13
years old.
Yeah, I was 13. Yeah. I was the only Mets fan in my neighborhood, and when they won, I had bragging rights for 1 year.
Yeah, it's funny, David.
Man.
I don't know how many by accident we end up bringing a lot of Mets fans on this show. Because I live in Orlando, everybody's a Yankees fan. I mean, with all the Red Sox and Yankees fans everywhere I go. And if the New York people, most of them are Yankees fans, but we somehow pull all these Mets guys out of nowhere.
I got this one hat that I love. I mean, it's kind of broken a lot now, but I don't know if you can see it. So they've given me Coach David. So when I coached,
nice.
Literally they ended up giving me. So I use it now for my team. Now is the Mets. So I coach and my son's like, but Dad, we get to the championship, we don't win. I'm like, Dad, it's just like the Mets. We're fine. It's okay.
Oh man, they killed me last year. I had my money saved up. I was ready to go watch one of the playoff games. I thought they were going all the way, and they just tanked.
Well, that's what a true Met fan is. We just
that was a heartbreaker.
We suffer with them, and we gotta hopefully next year they'll do something. I don't know. I'm not even watching them the rest of this year.
When you have those kind of budgets to work with, they don't really have a full rebuild. So they could probably flip a 1-year rebuild around. So yeah, I think it'll be all right.
We'll see. You just got to pick the right guys.
I mean, I'm a Tigers fan. It's going on like a 7-year rebuild. So well, they're starting to hit the ball. I guess that's about all I can hope for right now.
Well, guys, we want to thank you for Jesse. Thank you for being on the show with us today. Just real quickly, we're going to just plug our sponsors, Easy Mortgage, for sponsoring the shows along with DC3 Bat Company. Brian again has forgot the glove.
We were playing catch with it today, so I will tell you that I was using it and breaking that thing in.
But it's an official DC3 Bat Company baseball glove with Legends on Deck, official Legends on Deck glove. We want to thank them for sponsoring the show. And if you see on Brian's head, he has an official Legends on Deck logo hat, and I have an official Stars and Stripes logo Legends on Deck shirt. So we keep plugging along. If you guys want to help support the show, Go on to our website. It leads you over to the merch shop. Get your own Legend on Deck gear. And once again, Jesse, we just want to thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. It was a blast.
Yeah, appreciate it too. And don't forget, follow us on YouTube, Spotify. Is the two places you could podcast. Of course, visit legendsondeck.com for all the updated articles and everything else coming out. So, been a great time. Episode 52 with Jesse Marlo. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.